everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Leading Change webinar, Inside Out, Embedded Digital Learning Options into a School District. Today's webinar is sponsored by Odysseyware. Before we begin, I'd like to review just a few quick housekeeping items. We will be accepting questions throughout the webinar and stopping periodically to answer them. We'll also hold a Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please go ahead and send your questions in as they come up for you using the questions feature in your control panel. You can type your question into the top box and click Send. I'll receive the question and put it into the queue to be answered by our speakers throughout the presentation. You'll also see a chat feature in that control panel. Just to keep things simple, we ask that you just use the questions feature. If you do put something in chat, we'll get it, but just to streamline things, if you could put any of your questions or comments into the question feature, we'd appreciate it. If you experience any technical difficulties during the presentation, you can use that same questions feature to get our attention, and we'll do our best to resolve the problem for you. Now let's get started. I'm pleased to welcome our speakers from the Racine Unified School District in Wisconsin. James O'Hagan, the Director of Digital and Virtual Learning, and Kelly Pochop, the Virtual Learning Coordinator. James O'Hagan is actively involved in all areas of education, including cutting-edge instructional and learning space design, paradigm shifting, student career preparation, pedagogy evolution, and community relations. He has a strong passion for technology to motivate and inspire students, creating fun and challenging learning environments. Over the course of his career, he has worn many hats as an educator, including fifth grade teacher, director of technology, and assistant principal. He is an active technology blogger and serves on the Racine Public Library Board of Trustees. Kelly Pochop has served as a teacher, Smaller Learning Communities Grant Coordinator, Online Learning Facilitator, and Virtual Learning Coordinator Administrator. He specializes in the design and implementation of digital innovations for learners. Prior to becoming the Virtual Learning Coordinator for Racine in 2010, Kelly launched the Madison Virtual Campus for the Madison Metropolitan School District and was also involved in the startup of Digital Districts Online of WISNet. We're very excited to hear what these gentlemen have to share with us today about what's going on in Racine, so I'm going to hand things over to them to get us started.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Again, this is James O'Hagan right now speaking. What we're going to talk about today is really not just about blended learning or online instruction. What we're going to talk about actually is a meaningful learning experience for children. I think that's the key to all this, is that we're not focusing on the tools, we're not focusing on how we provide that instruction, but really trying to create an experience that is absolutely meaningful as far as learning goes. And the big question is then, to create that experience, why would we want to go and use digital and virtual tools to do that? And a lot of that comes into our vision and our mission for our department. I am the Director of Digital and Virtual Learning for the school district, and so we focus again on both credit recovery, allowing students to do online original credit courses, and also in some cases we're actually doing unit recovery. So say a student is failing a course, we're actually going in and using Odysseyware as one of our tools to provide unit recoveries for those students, so we don't have to wait for them to fail a course and have to go into any sort of a credit recovery option. So what we try to do in our department is to educate every student to succeed anytime and anywhere. So we don't really focus on the physical walls. And what we do is we provide opportunities for student success outside the traditional classroom in rigorous, leading-edge ways through personalized virtual coursework and mentorship. And the mentorship is a key component of that. We don't just use our classroom teachers as mentors, but we actually have a system of mentors that we use in our online programs to provide an advocate, somebody to proctor an exam, a personal touchstone, if you will, for students while they're taking their online courses. So we provide a student-centered approach to learning, both blended and virtual, and embedded into the traditional brick-and-mortar school. That's important for us. We do not have a separate virtual school in Racine. We are actually embedded into the traditional school day. And what that allows us to do is be ultimately flexible with providing our students with means of instruction that are going to be most meaningful for them and provide them the most flexibility and able to gain credits and in that instruction. And again, our services, we provide credit recovery, we provide computer-based instruction, both of those using Odysseyware, and we also provide virtual online learning opportunities too for students.
One of the keys to that whole overview then, this is Kelly talking, is that flexible is our word for this, that yes, we're embedded into the traditional brick and mortar schools, but we're not bound by hard start dates and end dates. We're not bound by a semester 1 or a semester 2 or a summer term. Our students can start courses at any time, and the grade goes on to their transcript or into their school record at the time they finish the course. So it gives us a lot of flexibility to be able to go beyond boundaries, both bricks and time limits.
So the question that we want to start off with today, because this is sort of what we're focusing on. Again, we're using this as a way to provide a meaningful learning experience for our students, and we want to make sure that we're all kind of having that common nomenclature, is what is blended learning. So in the book Blended, Using Disruptive Innovation to Improve Schools by Michael Horn and Heather Staker, they actually detail there's 4 types of instruction, and I just want to briefly go over what those may be so that, again, we're all on the same page. So there's the traditional way of instruction, which is the factory system and remnants of the industrial area. So that's the students are promoted by age, they go from one grade to the next, students receive a single curriculum, usually provided in a face-to-face environment. Instructional materials are mainly going to be textbooks, lectures, and then they'll have their individual written assignments. In an online environment, online instruction is where the education is delivered through the internet. So the internet delivers content and instruction. Again, sometimes that is also following the same path for every student, but again, it's just delivered in a different way. A technology-rich instruction, you see a lot of what's happening is that we've taken the traditional classroom and now we've added in things such as electronic whiteboards, access to the internet, document cameras, digital textbooks, internet tools, Google Apps for education, for example, and online lessons. So despite the presence of digital tools, online learning does not take a turn replacing face-to-face direct instruction for content delivery in this environment. It's just we now have loaded it up with devices. So in a blended approach to learning, what we're doing is it's a formal education program in which a student learns, at least in part, through online learning with some element of student control over time, place, path, and or the pace, and at least in part at a supervised brick and mortar location away from home. Student learning path within the course is connected to the provide an integrated learning experience. So again, in the blended spaces, again, you see these 4 main features. You see that it is brick and mortar, that it is face-to-face. There is a face-to-face component. There is also an online component. And the big part for students, and something that's very difficult for some teachers, is students have control over their pace going through the course. And again, as we look at the different types of blended learning, there may be some on here that you actually recognize. One in particular that is very popular is flipped, the flipped classroom. Many people have written books, done whole sessions around how to flip your classroom. But really a flipped classroom is just one subset of the rotation model. Many elementary teachers, I was an elementary teacher myself, we know a lot about the rotation model, station rotations especially, where students go from table to table in a classroom and have a different experience. The flipped classroom is simply a rotation model, but rather than going table to table, the student actually uses the home as their, I guess you could say, their second table before they come back to the traditional classroom. So that's really, in a simplified nutshell, what a flipped classroom is. But we also have the flex models, a la carte, and enriched models of instruction. So in a flex model and a la carte, the students are going to have more choice over the path that they're going to take in their instruction in the course. So I have some examples here. This is a classroom, and if you're familiar with that device, that's the one laptop per child PC. They were trying to be the $100 laptop. And I'm going to set the scenario here, and in your mind, I want you to try to figure out, is this blended learning? Is what you see here blended learning? So the scenario is as this. Sonia's teacher posted all of her lesson plans, assignments, and quizzes on Blackboard's learning management system. Sonia can access this class page online from her brick-and-mortar classroom or from home using the tablet her school loaned her, in this case, the one laptop per child. Is this example blended learning? I'll give you a second to think about that. And I can't see the chat, so if people are putting answers into the chat, I can't see it, but maybe Kelly, you can. But in this case, this is not a blended learning approach. The internet is hosting the information for Sonia's class, but it is not managing the delivery of content and instruction. Sonia's teacher is doing that. Thus, Sonia does not have control over the time, pace, path, or pace of her learning. The class is learning the same thing at the same time and moving through the curriculum as a single batch instead of using the online platform to serve each student the right lesson at the right time. This is a technology-rich instruction and not blended learning. Here's our second example. And again, we're trying to see, is this scenario blended learning? Matthew is a full-time student at Mountain Heights Academy. He completes his work on his own off-campus with his online teachers live via webcam. He uses Skype to connect with the school's virtual chess club. Is this environment blended learning?
We've got a couple answers coming in as no.
This is not blended learning. Matthew is not learning in a supervised brick-and-mortar location away from home. He is connecting with his classmates and teachers in real time, but not face-to-face on campus. Matthew is a full-time virtual school student, and he is not a blended learner. Now we have our third scenario. Angela enjoys playing online math games on the computer in the school library. She also takes algebra with a face-to-face teacher who does not know about the online games but appreciates that Angela seems to be quick with math facts. Is this a blended learning environment? It's the third one, so it must be, right?
Well, we're getting some yeses and some nos. No consensus.
Actually, this is also not a blended learning environment. Angela's math activities are not connected to create an integrated, unified algebra course. She learns math in the library, but no one is collecting that data and using them to update her learning plan back in the traditional math class. Angela is using online learning in the library, but not as part of a blended learning program. So as you see, I may have described a situation that you have in your own school, and so you may be thinking, well, maybe we do have a blended learning environment, or maybe now you're starting to think, well, is my environment more technology rich? And what you'll see, this is actually a diagram that comes from the Minneapolis Public Schools. And this is a standard classroom that they have at their schools. So as you'll see, in this, you may see many of these devices in your own classroom as you look around. You may see the data projector, the audio system, the interactive whiteboard, teacher laptop, maybe a student response system, document cameras, some kind of cart. But this is an example of a technology-rich classroom. A technology-rich classroom can be part of a blended learning environment, but a technology-rich classroom by itself is not a blended learning environment, if that makes sense. So now that we have an idea of what blended learning is and the difference between blended learning and technology rich. I just want to take this moment that we have before we dive into this next question. Are there any questions about any of that to this point?
We did have a question come in that was, you started the program by saying that the virtual school is really embedded into the traditional school. And the question was, did you launch your virtual school originally as a standalone, or was it always just an embedded part of the system?
If I said virtual school, it was a mistake on my part. We do not have a virtual school. We do provide virtual online courses for our students, and those have always been embedded into our traditional schools. Kelly, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so just to clarify kind of where the person asking the question was getting to, when we started online learning in the district in 2010, it was a deliberate choice at that time to not have a virtual school, but skip that phase of educational model and just go directly to the hard work of embedding the online courses into all the schools at that time, knowing that by the end of this decade, half of all high school classes will be taught online in some format, by the time we get to this 2020. So that's why we skipped the virtual school phase, is that we went ahead and did the hard work of figuring this out now.
And what we've actually found, we are part of the Wisconsin eSchool Network, which is a network of schools in the state of Wisconsin that have various online learning programs. Some of them have their own virtual schools. Some of them have no brick and mortar at all. Some of them are embedded into their traditional schools. And what we've actually started to find is that from our perspective, we see a lot of those schools that have gone to either a no brick and mortar or have a virtual school within their district. We've actually seen that they've started to stagnate a little bit in their growth because some online courses some students are good with online courses, some are not. Some do well in some subjects in online courses and some do not. So we have a lot of flexibility on whether our student wishes to take a face-to-face or if they want to take an online course. And we think that it may vary subject to subject on where the student performs well and is able to meet the learning goals of the course. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, no, that was great clarification. I'm glad we got that out in the open. And we had one other question come in. You referenced mentors early on as well, and this person wanted to know if those mentors are all teachers.
Our mentors are all teachers, and they operate. We actually have three. So we have three comprehensive high schools. So the traditional 9 through 12. They actually work within the school buildings, and it's a place for students to come into the school, meet with a face-to-face person if they are having questions about a course or need to get some sort of guidance about a course or need a proctoring of an exam. The idea behind the online mentor teacher is very similar to what Dr. Sugata Mitra has done with self-organized learning environments for students. His work he did in India. You can look up the TED Talk on Dr. Mitra's work of the School in the Cloud, School in the, a computer in the wall program where he actually stuck a computer into a wall in a slum in India and found that students were able to self-organize and actually learn a little bit about DNA replication. What he actually found was these students performed very well with very little oversight or instruction, but the one component that actually helped them leapfrog forward a little bit was adding in he calls them an Indian grandmother over the shoulder, where he actually now employs retired teachers to do these sort of check-ins with students who are learning things in online environments, self-organizing themselves, and then these retired teachers kind of check in and say, so tell me what's going on, how are things working with you? Just asking kind of probing questions, but not actually instructing the children.
Right, that's a great reference. I think we're all set to move forward.
Okay. So the big question, because we showed what blended learning model is the best, and again, flipped classroom is very popular, and you may say, that flipped is the best model because you're very well aware of it. But what we actually want to point out is that there really is no best blended learning model. The best blended learning model is the one that is right for the moment. It's not going to be one that is necessarily going to be used all year long in the same class in the same way. It's what really is right for that moment with the students that you have. In one school year, you may be a teacher who is very good using a flex model, and then your next year you may find students that need that a flipped model may be more appropriate, or a station rotation may be appropriate. Or the day may change, the lesson may change, the subject may change, and that blended learning model is going to shift based on all of those different instances. So Heather Staker and Michael Horn, actually, in their book, Blended Using Disruptive Innovation to Improve Schools, actually provided kind of a matrix to help teachers and instructors decide what would be a good blended model approach based off of several questions. So as you go through the chart here, you will see the questions and basically circle the answers that you want. Now you'll notice that in some cases the answers to the questions may replicate between the different models because there are similarities between these models. Again, the station rotation, lab rotation, flipped classroom, and individual rotation, those are all rotational models. So you'll see that some of the answers change between those. And the idea is as you answer these questions, you total up your answers at the bottom. Now you may say, well, does that tell me exactly what model I should be using? The other important piece, and a lot of people miss this, is that there's actually a second page to this. And that second page is where you as the educator synthesize your results that you got from looking at the matrix. The fear, I guess we can talk about some of the fears around blended learning and using online instructional tools, is that a lot of times teachers feel that they will be replaced in this kind of a model and when online learning is propagated. And what we've actually found it is the direct opposite. The expertise of a teacher is very important, especially when you're trying to personalize and make learning more personal for an individual student. So the teacher is a very key component in all of this. And the expertise of a good teacher is very key in all of this here. So as you go to synthesize your results, it's not just answering these 6 questions and being able to turn it around and say, okay, we're going to use this model. It's also knowing your student population. It's also knowing not just your class as a whole, but what your instructional goals are and what that will look like as you plan out the lessons. So like we said, what's the best blended learning model? It's impossible to say what that is because that's going to change for every instance, every subject, every school year with whatever group of students you have. So it's not a good idea to necessarily get married to any one blended learning model. Now you may find that one works very well for you as an educator, and that's fine, but it's also good, like I said, to look at we're talking about building meaningful learning experiences for students, not what makes the teacher the most comfortable. Kelly, do you have anything to add to that?
No, you're right on track there. That you're focusing on what is the problem you're trying to solve, rather than predetermining the answer. Which you might think our current factor-driven schools, you might say, predetermine what the answer is, and this gives us an opportunity to rethink all of that.
So what we've actually done, and this is where the inside out kind of comes from in all of this, is we've actually developed and come up with these pockets of disruption throughout the district. Again, because we don't have a dedicated virtual school, and because we have the flexibility of using our OdysseyWare package as well as our other virtual learning tools, we've actually been able to develop these what we call pockets of disruption. Now, these aren't pilot programs in all cases. These aren't these in some cases may actually be one-offs, because what we are looking at is how do we help students meet their learning needs? How are we creating, again, meaningful learning experiences for students? And as you see here, what we've actually done is these pockets of disruption that we've created throughout the district. And disruption, a a lot of times has a negative connotation. But what we are really disrupting is the teacher-centered approach to instruction, and we're actually focusing on student-centered needs. So throughout the district, we have several areas that our department is embedded into the school. For example, we use our OdysseyWare package to do most of our credit recovery. We also use OdysseyWare for computer-based instruction courses for original credit at the alternative education site and for our students who are in juvenile detention. We also actually have outreach programs to our private schools and to our homeschool communities. We don't see them as competitors. We see them as partners in all of this that we are doing here. We actually are providing academic services to students who are on expulsion. So because a lot of times when students are expelled, they are kind of just cast off, and they're supposed to get instructional services, but a lot of times those facilities where they're supposed to get their instructional services are filled up. We have actually worked with some of our students to provide them academic services while they are on expulsion. We actually offer advanced math courses for students. Fifth graders, for example, are taking advanced sixth grade math, and what we've actually seen is now we've disrupted the traditional path for the elementary student coming into high school, and we have some students coming into high school who are ready to start with Algebra 2 trigonometry as a freshman. That has disrupted the traditional paths for students in our schools as well. So we have a brief video here as a spotlight about how using OdysseyWare and blended learning has disrupted and transformed our district. And we're going to take a few moments to show that to you. But before we do, are there any questions that have popped up that we should address right now?
We did have a couple questions about the model that you shared with us, and one of them was, how adept are your teachers at using this model? Is having the freedom to choose these different teaching methods freed them, or does it just lead them to do the same old, same old?
We actually have a pretty good diversity of those models, and when we get to the end of the presentation, I can show you a more comprehensive worksheet that we actually have that details exactly what models are being used where and for what programs. The nice thing about a lot of this is these models, while in a lot of ways they are very strict and they have their rules, you don't necessarily have to present the idea to a teacher that, okay, now we're going to do enriched, or now we're going to do a flipped, or now we're going to do a flex. It's that you come to them and say, I understand you have this learning need with this student. Let's try to do it this way and see if this works for this student. And when we do that, a lot of teachers, being good teachers, are able to adapt to that and really focus in on the learning goals. So we don't come in and say we're going to start with this model and then work from there. We say, what's the need, what does the student need, and how can we all come together to make sure that this need is met for this student. And whatever model fits at that time is what's going to be employed. That's not to say that every model works perfectly, but we can always go back and reevaluate and start again if we need to. So it's we have ultimate freedom and input from the teachers and the students to meet those needs, those educational needs.
And that's the key why we aren't a formal program or school within the school district. We actually can be doing this from the inside out rather than the top down. And that gives us that flexibility to meet student needs.
That makes sense. And as you said, flexibility is key in all of this.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right.
Another question, just quickly before we move on, you had mentioned homeschoolers, and someone just wondered how you were reaching out to those folks and inviting them into this program.
Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, two examples that happened just this week. We had a student who moved to Racine from California and another one who came from Arkansas. So here we are in the fourth quarter of the school year, and if you follow the traditional processes, they would be enrolled in their school, made to go to class, they don't know anybody, and they're in the middle of a semester and they feel very, very lost, and the teachers kind of know, well, what do we do with this kid? And in both cases, we outline an option for the parents to homeschool their children because the state law allows them to take 2 online courses at no cost from their public school district. So they're able to continue their education, and then next fall they have plans then to integrate into their high schools in a much more comfortable fashion. So there's one example of how we use our homeschool laws to serve our student population.
And I had conversations with people recently, superintendents in other states, where not just school choice, but voucher systems are coming into place. And what we've been able to do is, while Wisconsin has had kind of a checkered past recently with their education system making national news, the laws have been rewritten in a way that actually we've taken advantage of to, again, attract back students that are homeschooled, students that are in private schools, but not saying to them you have to give up your homeschooling or give up your private school. We can provide educational services to you. And by doing so, we actually recoup some of those dollars that were lost when students go to private schools or are homeschooled. So we do get funding from the state as students are taking online courses through us.
Right. I think, Kelly, especially that example was just a really great one of the flexibility that all of this is, again, being able to offer you and the parents and the students. So that's great. And I know this video is going to show us even more.
Yep. So let's see here. Hopefully you all can hear it. Oh, I should start it over.
I want a program that's flexible. I want a program that will meet the needs of the majority of the students in our district at whatever need that might be. I want a program that is not going to take us to any one extreme where it has to be done a specific way in a classroom.
Our goal was to start at the high school level and to get the online, the remote learning type courses available to students at that time. When I came here 5 years ago, about 200 students chose to leave the district of open enrollment and go off to other virtual charter schools. And by hanging on to those students, by offering online options here, that would pay for everything that we wanted to do with our own students who are online.
Again, we're in an age right now where we are allowed to present our students with multiple options. We are really allowed to develop personalized learning plans for many of our students. If we have this idea that students can learn anytime, anywhere, any place, where things happen synchronously and asynchronously, now that changes the whole dynamic of the classroom.
I like it a lot better because if I'm not feeling good one day, I can go home and not stay at school to do it. I can go home and log in and finish the work that I need to be done.
I enjoy having the option of having more independence and having a say of how I learn.
We chose Odyssey where it has a pretty much anytime, any place offer. That program offers them an opportunity to get those courses taken care of and get the credits that they need to graduate from high school.
So when a student can come into a credit recovery situation and be done within 1 day or 1 week or even a couple of weeks, they feel so much better about themselves compared to they accepted a failing grade before. But when you can provide an option that captures what they already know and lets them quickly demonstrate that they have competency, they have mastery of the content, that gives them a lot more hope. It provides relief, and in many cases I see that students then regain the path to graduation.
When I do on the computer, I'm going to take my time. Like, if I don't get that, I can always go back and wait about, okay, I turned this in now, I may not get it yet.
I think technology meeting diverse needs of students is a critical component. Our kids all learn at different rates. They all have different background experiences. We have a number of intervention programs within our district as well as acceleration programs.
Well, we're a very diverse district, and we have students at all ranges. We have students on their way to the top colleges anywhere in top careers, and we have students who struggle every day to just get through the day. So Odyssey Ware provides an opportunity to provide that personalized learning.
The personalization then has to happen at the content level where the students have a playlist. They can choose what they want to do and when they want to do it. But they'll still have the adults, the teachers, the facilitators to guide them that they get a well-rounded education.
What we've seen is a big decrease in the number of expulsions that we have reported to the state as a district. On average, we were running about 180 a year over the last couple of years. I think the last 2 or 3 years, we're running about 60 expulsions a year. That's a huge change. That's a lot of progress in a short time.
They're much more engaged in their learning. They're much more committed to it, and they're much more motivated to accomplish what they need to do.
Same as if we choose our own music, and I'm ready for jazz as opposed to some rock. I need some rap right now, but later on I'm going to need some classical music. We have that choice. As Americans, for so many things, that has to happen in the country too.
The kids can truly do the work at the pace and time that they need to do it, and that right now is one of our most critical pieces.
And the world is global, and our students can be global learners without leaving their doorstep.
Okay, so that's a bit of our story here, and one of the things again that needs to be addressed is our increasing graduation rates. We actually have, over the last 5 years, our graduation rate has increased 11%, and part of that is due, we believe, to the credit recovery options and course options that we offer for our students through our online courses. In fact, and Kelly, if you want to go over the data here a little bit, we actually have compiled some actual data of students in OdysseyWare courses and how many credit recoveries we have and where we see our graduation rates going. So Kelly, if you want to talk about this briefly.
Yeah, thank you. I'll preface it by saying the district has a number of options going to improve the graduation rate, including better counseling, freshman cohorts to provide more support during that first year. But we feel that there's a good correlation between using digital tools and blended learning options, because we're able to focus in a very flexible way a specific course to a specific student at a specific time that's going to be meaningful to them to get what they need to graduate. And as you look at the columns here, especially focus on senior head count in OdysseyWare, you notice that in 2012 that number was very low, and now that we've matured, we're getting 200, 300. This year we're going to get 400 seniors easily involved in credit recovery type options, and that has to drive why that graduation rate is going up, because we're able to be very specific. It's not in batch mode anymore. We're able to be very targeted to an individual, and that makes all the difference. So you look at the senior data over time, it keeps going up, and so those question marks for our graduation percentage, we're very curious when that data will come out from our State Department to see what that's going to look like. But we're also looking at this year's freshmen, or actually this was last year's freshmen, that we're actually getting more freshmen involved in credit recovery rather than waiting till their junior and senior year to fix up their transcripts. We're getting a hold of them early, and so we think that in the next 4 years that graduation rate is going to climb even more. We're welcome to any questions about this, but this is kind of a quick data picture of why we think this is working for us.
We don't have any questions yet about that data, but we may in a bit. So I think let's just go ahead.
All right, we'll continue. So again, this is about those pockets of readiness, and what one of those pockets of readiness has actually become for us is actually our summer school credit recovery. And what our summer school credit recovery program looks like, this is again for high school students, is in the past the way it has operated has been a face-to-face environment where there are multiple sites, so done at multiple comprehensive high schools. It is all seat time based, and it was very teacher-centered. So again, this was meeting the needs of the teacher delivering course content. not really a meaningful experience for children who are trying to earn their course credits. In the recent past, what we've tried and had some success with is using a blended learning approach. Again, using OdysseyWare as our credit recovery package, and then having it again still at multiple sites. Instead now it is competency-based, so it's not based around how long a student sits in a chair, but it's around what does the student actually know. They are pre-tested as they come onto the course, and then they are only required to complete modules that they show deficiency. The nice thing about that is that while our summer school sessions run 24 days, if the student can demonstrate complete competency at 70% or higher of the course content, then they are able to leave the summer school session. They do not have to return at all, so they can be there for a day if they only need that, or they can go the full 28 days, or in some cases even we've had students who within the 28 days are still not able to complete their credit recovery course, but because it's this competency-based and not based around seat time, we are actually able to extend those students into the fall semester, and they can continue their coursework when they return in September. And again, it was still very much, a teacher-centered approach in some ways, where we still had one teacher in with the students, trying to quote-unquote control the environment. And what the ideal environment for us would be is again, a blended learning approach using OdysseyWare. Now what we would like to do eventually is try to reduce things down to a single site location so we can put our best teachers in one location. At this point we are not able to have everybody at a single site, but that's what we would like for the future. Again, we still want to keep this competency-based. We want to keep this student-centered. And by that I mean beyond just the software and using the blended learning approach, which is student-centered, but also providing student supports in those classrooms. So one of the things we're doing this summer with our credit recovery is trying to keep our student-to-teacher ratios very low, so about 15:1. And we're also trying to employ more ELL, so English language learner or English as a second language teachers, in some cases, as you may call them, and also special ed teachers. We feel that in many cases, a lot of these students who do end up in summer school are not just having issues with their academics, but they also may be underserved already as it is. They may be, they might have a language deficiency that is undiagnosed, or they may have a special ed diagnosis, which is a special ed condition which is undiagnosed. And we will want to have those teachers there to maybe recognize and take that opportunity, that time to work with those students and maybe provide better services for those students than what we had been able to in the past. And in the structure in this environment, we're talking about having 3 challenges. Okay, so in summer school we have 3 challenges that we're faced with. Right now, our school district has gone from requiring 2 math credits for graduation to 3 math credits for graduation. All the while we have done away with the consumer math classes, the Algebra A, Algebra B type of math classes. We're actually right now, our school district is requiring students to complete an algebra course, a geometry course, and an Algebra 2 course for graduation. That's at a minimum. We also have a second challenge, which we want our freshmen to complete their freshman year with 6 credits. In the state of Wisconsin, a semester course is 0.5 credits. So what we're asking here is actually for students to pass 12 semesters worth of courses. And then challenge 3 is we had an impact, a change to the teacher handbook, which we feel may impact available staffings for our summer school program. Basically what it used to be was that teachers were paid an hourly rate based on their years of experience, and that has been changed to where teachers are paid a flat hourly rate no matter their level of experience. And we feel this may impact the number of more veteran teachers that we have coming in, so we need to be able to provide better supports for those teachers in a smaller learning environment. So we have some SMART goals written up. So our SMART goals for this summer, goal 1, by the end of summer school, 65% of students taking a summer school credit recovery math class will earn 0.5 credits. So we want 65 of those kids to earn at least a semester's worth of math. Goal 2, by the end of summer school, 65% of freshman students taking a summer school credit recovery class will earn 0.5 credits. So we want the majority of our freshmen to earn at least one course worth of credits. And then by the beginning of May, we want 90% of our summer school staffings to be decided. Our postings just went out, so we're hoping to have our teaching staff in place by the beginning of May. We actually have a professional development day set aside for May 11th to educate our staff about the summer school staff about changes that we're making to summer school, and also how to use the OdysseyWare environment to track student progress and adjust as needed throughout the summer school session.
To give some context to those goals, in the past, with our previous models that were kind of underdeveloped and undersupported, half the students would pass a summer school credit recovery course, whether it was a face-to-face model or whether it was computer-based instruction. So we're taking on the challenge of raising that percentage by 15% this summer by shifting the model to a more blended learning approach. And the interesting part is that the students who engage in the learning are the ones who pass the courses. The ones who don't engage are the ones who don't make it. So we're looking at ways to increase student engagement through more hands-on support by a teacher who has that educational background to say, am I looking at a reading problem or a motivational problem? Am I looking at a lack of sleep, or is there something else going on? And that's what we're going to take on this summer.
So again, this was the future that we're looking at, and we're hoping to make this happen. And what I want to talk about here briefly is about the professional development. So again, we want our student experience to be a team-taught experience for the students. So one teacher of record, and again, 2 additional teachers, preferably one special ed and one English as a second language learner teacher using OdysseyWare. Again, we want to keep our teacher-student ratio low to meet that goal, and we figure 15:1 is a good number to work with. And we also believe that our library should have a prominent role with our experience. Now, because we're not doing a single site right now, our library is going to have kind of a diminished role, but we've actually started to recreate our library spaces to be kind of hubs. My belief is that if your library is a healthy space for your building, a place where students want to be, I think that's a good indicator of how healthy your whole school actually is. So we really feel that our libraries should play a vital role in this student experience, because space impacts behavior. So when a student walks into a classroom, the classroom sends a message of what is the expectation of learning that day. If the furniture is set in rows, if the everything is pointed to the front of the room, the message sent to the student is that you're going to be sitting here for a lecture today, and I don't want you moving around. If the student walks into a classroom and they see things in groups, or they see things where there's going to be small group activities taking place, the message is that I want you to collaborate today, I want you to work with other people today. So the space impacts behavior. And what we see, this is an example of one of our buildings. This is actually Case High School, which is on the west side of Racine. And what you see here is actually in yellow space, and surrounding that are arrows pointed, and what you actually see are these larger rooms. So if you look and see 173 and 175, we actually see those rooms potentially in the future as being spaces where we can hold larger classes, larger groups of classes, and then the doors here, you can kind of see it. You can kind of see it here on the right side where you see 122 and 120. You see the door frames there. Those actually open up directly into the library. So we see the library actually as an extension of the classroom, as a place where students can go and work, where groups can be had, small groups can work, again, during the summer. The space is also air conditioned. The environment that a student is in is also very important. So we feel that if the environment is too hot or it's too cold, the student has other distractions going on, it takes away from the learning experience we have here. And if you see this, this is actually the early rendering that we have of the new furniture that we are putting into that library. So you'll see that there is opportunity, there's soft seating areas, there's place for collaboration to take place, there's traditional tables in there, all this furniture is completely movable by the students. So this space can be remade around whatever the need is of that day. So the space does impact behavior and it impacts learning, and we feel that that's an important component to a blended learning environment. So that's the end of the bulk of our presentation. It sounded like we had some questions as we were going through, and I know that last part we kind of talked about what our future hopefully is. Are there any other questions or comments for either of us?
We do have some questions that came in. Thank you very much for going through everything that you did. I think this was a really great picture of how you've implemented the virtual learning and the blended learning models. So before we head into the Q&A, I'd just like to do a quick thank you to today's sponsor, OdysseyWare. James and Kelly both mentioned how they're using OdysseyWare, and so you probably picked up on that it is an individualized learning program and provides educators with powerful and flexible online personalized learning solutions that empower students in all kinds of learning environments. You can learn more about OdysseyWare at odysseyware.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions about that as well. So moving on to questions specifically for James and Kelly. One is back again to those models, which is how have you trained teachers to understand what the different models are and really to understand when is the best time and place to use the different models?
Kelly?
This is what's kind of counterintuitive to what our approach is, I should say, is that we don't name it before we do it. In a sense, the teacher comes to us and says, you know, I have a situation I'm trying to resolve. It might be at the classroom level, it might be a handful of students, it might be just one student. But they reach out through our office and say, can you come and talk to us? And so then, you know, we have the ability then to get out to any of the schools as quickly as we can, and it's from there that we develop the solution for that student, for that classroom, whatever it may be. It's afterwards that we came back and said, okay, now let's put a name to what we've done here. And we were surprised that there were, you know, about 40 different things happening in the district. All could have a slightly different name, a slightly different approach, but we were meeting needs of hundreds of different kinds of students. And so hopefully that's maybe not the answer you're looking for, but that's kind of how it's more of a philosophy than it is something that you can put on paper and say, okay, now do this.
I'm going to see if I can pull up our sheet too, that we have all the different models and where our pockets of disruption are in here. So.
Yeah, and I think, Kelly, that really points to what you guys talked about earlier, is that this isn't about the tools, it's about solving those problems and the student-centered approach. And so, yeah, you're not going in and saying, okay, we're doing flipped classroom today. You're figuring out what are the needs of those students and what's going to meet them best.
And as you see here, this is a breakdown. We have our different models and what the pocket is. So you see there, we look at after-school credit recovery. That actually was an autonomous use of an individual station rotation. So when we say autonomous, it meant it required some backing of building leaders, district leaders, in order to make the change for that pocket. But as you'll see, for example, the math labs in this area here, we actually have as a lab rotation model. But in order to do that, we didn't have to really get too much beyond the teachers to say, yes, we can help you with that change. So it was a lightweight sort of change to the school day. But for example, our summer school credit recovery, That was a heavyweight change. That was somebody coming from high up. That was actually our deputy superintendent saying, we're going to use OdysseyWare as our summer school credit recovery, and that was a very much a major change for our district to go from that face-to-face to a more blended learning approach and using OdysseyWare.
Great. I think that was a helpful explanation. Another question, do you have students taking the same course together in a computer lab at one at a time, or do you have students taking many different courses in a lab at the same time?
It's
all of the above.
Yeah. Mostly, though, I would say if you walk into one of our credit recovery, if we're focusing on credit recovery, you may see more students than not taking different courses at the same time, and getting supports from their teachers as needed. We have some cases where students are taking virtual courses. Again, these are ones for original credit. Again, on their pace and at their own pace, and wherever they're at, and that you may see students taking that course as a group, but they may all be in different spots. They may need different supports while they go through that coursework. So we have a little bit of everything going on. Again, that's the beauty of our program, is there's no real one way to define it. We are really trying to create that meaningful experience for students.
All right. Beyond summer school, do you give your students access to OdysseyWare or any of your other virtual learning programs to do and work with over the summer?
Yes, that we're able to provide. Sometimes it's work on your own time and pace. Not even with a teacher, we're able to have a couple of kids, handful of kids use it that way. But we provide as many opportunities as we can when the traditional models don't work. So we're here to say yes to whatever we can, as opposed to trying to fit round pegs into square holes. We're much rather match the student to the learning. And it's at this point we affect probably 10 to 15% of our student population of 20,000 students in K-12, but by the end of the decade, we expect that we'll be affecting over half of our students. And that's a big shift in a short amount of time, and that's why we feel like this model has promise, because it's focusing on those areas of disruption, but they also become areas of opportunity for the district to learn how does this work and how can we make these shifts without having to commit overly much to a model that you might shift from in a year or so.
Yeah, going back to that flexibility and empowering people to do what they need to do for the best results. How do you let students choose and select their course preferences?
We actually, as far as our courses, the counselors have a key component in this. One of the things I did when I first came on was I tried to send a very clear message, because there was in some cases some gray areas about how students were selecting their courses. I got with the person who heads up the counselors, and the counselors are pretty much the gatekeepers. So our counselors are very much involved in not just student credit recovery, but as they're looking to earn original credits, how they go about doing that for our students in the comprehensives. Now, students who are outside of our school district, they're able to actually just contact our office directly, say they want to take an online course through us, and they're able to do that anywhere in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, if you look at our program, I think one of the largest school districts we actually service as far as students, well, I can give two examples. We have the Madison School District, which had an AP computer science teacher at some point, and right before school started, that AP computer science teacher left the district. And so rather than try to scramble and cancel the course, they actually enrolled, I think it was all 25 of those students were enrolled into the virtual online course that was offered through our school district. So those students are getting serviced in that way. We also have the La Crosse School District, where it seems that they're just getting into using virtual options for their student population, and they're learning. But right now we're offering many courses for them as well too.
Okay, great. Well, I think we have reached the end of our time and the end of our questions, so that worked out well. So thank you again, James and Kelly, and to everyone at the Racine School District for providing and sharing this information. It really was interesting and informative. And thanks to everyone who took the time to join us today. Keep an eye on your inbox for an email probably tomorrow that will have a link to the recording of today's presentation as well as a copy of those PowerPoint slides. There's a lot of good information you may want to reference later or share with other people on your team. We hope you'll be able to join us again in the future for another Leading Change webinar. Our next one is actually next week on April 27th, and it's going to focus on embedding career and technical education throughout the curriculum to prepare students for post-secondary success in the jobs of tomorrow. You can find more information about that webinar on the OdysseyWare website. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you all.
You all.